So good evening everybody. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 18th December 2024 and today we have some important articles for the discussion. And we'll discuss all these important articles, and these articles are from the Hindu newspaper. And apart from this discussion, we also have one mains based practice question as well, right? So that particular question that we are going to discuss, and we'll understand all the nuances of mains answer writing as well through this discussion, because it is also very important that we need to deconstruct the question. So first we need to deconstruct the question, and we need to understand how we need to structure the answer and how we can improve the presentation of the answer. So everything is very important. So we'll try to understand all those basic aspects of answer writing through the news analysis, and apart from that we will also cover all important articles on everyday basis, right? So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion and let's try to discuss. The first topic of the day is the bills on simultaneous elections have been introduced in the parliament, right? So in fact, so this is going to be a constitutional amendment bill. So therefore, any constitutional amendment bill, if the government wanted to introduce those constitutional amendment bills in the parliament, any house of the parliament, so they must be passed by a simple majority. A simple majority is required for such a bills. So however, these bills have been introduced in the parliament, and in fact the government also promised to send those bills to the joint parliamentary committees, where the joint parliamentary committees will have a detailed scrutiny of those bills. And in fact, these parliamentary joint committees will also make a detailed suggestions about the shortcomings of the bill. What are the I would say the disadvantages of simultaneous elections, and how it impacts the federal structure. Remember that federalism is part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. So we all knew that S.R. Bommai judgment, in that particular judgment, the Supreme Court has held that federalism is part of the basic structure, and the simultaneous elections without any doubt will influence the federal features of the Indian Constitution. However, this remains to be seen how the central government will make sure that these constitutional amendment bills will pass in the parliament, both houses of the parliament. Remember that this bill is also referred to as 129th constitutional amendment bill. This is 129th constitutional amendment bill. So you should have to remember this bill because it is very important for your exam. So this is the constitutional amendment bill only. So it is not yet passed by the both houses of the parliament. It is not yet became the constitutional amendment, that you need to remember, and we'll try to understand a brief context and then we'll proceed on to discuss. Remember about simultaneous elections, we have discussed about this multiple number of times. Simultaneous elections. Now what is the basic idea of simultaneous elections? Now we have a federal form of government in the sense that we have a union government and also the provincial governments or the state governments. And in fact, Indian Constitution has also clearly provided for the division of powers between the union government as well as the provincial governments. So we have the parliamentary form of government at the union level and also parliamentary form of government at the state level as well. So every 5 years elections usually takes place for every state, like center also. So however, as of now, there's no concept of simultaneous elections in India. So simultaneous elections basically an idea of conducting general elections to the Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly elections at a one single time, and that is the idea of simultaneous elections. So you may belong to different states. So in your state, elections would be conducted generally after 5 years, and there is no synchronization with the general elections at the center. So therefore now the idea is that the central government planning to conduct elections both for the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies at a one single go, and the central government or the union government has also been showing some reasons, some strong reasons for conducting simultaneous elections, right? So I hope you have understood what is the concept of simultaneous elections. So before in previous news analysis also we have understood what are the advantages of simultaneous elections. Now why the center has been planning to conduct the simultaneous elections? So because when we conduct simultaneous elections, there is no need to implement or bring in the model code of conduct. So because of model code of conduct, it is believed that it hampers the government programs, welfare policies of the government. So there are a lot of restrictions throughout the different parts of India when model code of conduct is frequently implemented. The central government has been showing that reason, that one reason. And apart from that, frequently conducting elections would also dent the trust and confidence of the voters, right? So we would like to celebrate democracy, this voting as a festival of democracy once in a 5 years. So therefore these are some there are other reasons also, right? Because when elections are conducted for different states at different periods of time, you need to deploy security forces, and that compromises the national security angle as well. So because of all these reasons, the central government has decided to hold simultaneous elections for both state legislative assemblies as well as the Lok Sabha as well. Now the context, I hope you have understood this. So there are two bills that the union government has introduced in the parliament, right? So these two bills are seeking to implement simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha as well as the state legislative assemblies, and in fact they were introduced in the Lok Sabha yesterday, right? So on Tuesday. So these two bills have been introduced in the Lok Sabha by Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal. So he is Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal, and he introduced these two bills for conducting simultaneous elections in the Lok Sabha. And in fact, there was an intense debate on these two bills in the Lok Sabha itself, and in fact the opposition members have strongly opposed these two bills as they in fact destroy federalism. Federalism is part of the basic structure doctrine. So therefore opposition members were not ready to support these simultaneous elections, and in fact opposition members are also demanding that this 129th constitutional amendment, particularly these two bills which are being introduced in the Lok Sabha, should be sent to the joint parliamentary committees for detailed scrutiny. Now what they do detailed scrutiny of these bills. Okay, so in joint parliamentary committees, members of both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha would scrutinize these two bills in a very detailed manner, and they also provide recommendations, or they also suggest some way forward on these simultaneous elections as well. However, opposition members have been demanding that these two bills must be sent to the joint parliamentary committees. Now why the opposition political parties have been strongly opposing the idea of simultaneous elections? Because the opposition parties have been saying that it destroys the federalism. Now federalism is provided by the Indian Constitution itself, and it is also part of the basic structure doctrine. And apart from that, simultaneous elections masks the regional issues. So regional issues are also very important, based on which the regional political parties have a strong presence in some states like Jharkhand, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and even some other states. So therefore there is a high likely that the national issues would dominate or would mask the regional issues as well, and that is the reason. And even opposition political parties like DMK and even Trinamool Congress from West Bengal have been strongly opposing the idea of simultaneous elections. So I hope you get a brief and a clear picture about the simultaneous elections. Now, as I've already told you that this is the Constitution 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill. right? So this is 129th constitutional amendment bill, and that you need to remember. And this bill has been introduced in the Lok Sabha after a 90-minute debate followed by a division of votes, and in fact it has been put to vote. So this bill has been put to vote. However, in this bill 263 members voted in favor of the bill, right? So once the bill put to vote, then the further proceedings with respect to the bill would continue, because this is a constitutional amendment bill, that you need to remember. So on Tuesday 263 members voted in favor of the bill while this bill is being introduced, and 198 members are opposing this bill, including the opposition party members, right? So there are there's an alliance called INDIA alliance. Okay, so that alliance has been strongly opposing the idea of simultaneous elections in India. So however, the law minister who introduced these two bills, these two constitutional amendment bills, 129th constitutional amendment bill as well as the Union Territories amendment bill in the Lok Sabha, seeks to align elections in the union territories also. Remember that there is one constitutional amendment bill, so that bill aimed at synchronizing elections to the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies, and the second bill is Union Territories Amendment Bill, and this Union Territories Amendment Bill seeks to align elections in the Union Territories. So it wanted to align elections in the Union Territories of Puducherry, Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir Lok Sabha election, because they also have the legislative assemblies. Puducherry have a legislative assembly, Delhi also have a legislative assembly, and even Jammu and Kashmir also have a legislative assembly after the bifurcation of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir into the union territories of Ladakh as well as Jammu and Kashmir. I hope you knew about this. Now, in fact, the legislation did not tamper with the powers which are being enjoyed by the states. And in fact, so principles such as judicial review, federal character of the constitution, separation of powers, and secular character, supremacy of the constitution did not change with these bills. Right? So this is what the central government has been saying with respect to these two constitutional amendment bills. And in fact, once these bills are being passed, so there is a very high likelihood that these bills will also be challenged in the judiciary, because they may violate the principles of federalism. However, the union government has been saying while introducing these bills, the federal character of the Indian constitution, separation of powers, secular character, supremacy of the constitution, so they did not change with these bills. And in fact, there will be no tampering with the basic structure of the constitution as well. This is what the center has been saying with respect to the bills which are being introduced in the Lok Sabha. So however, a simple majority initially is required for the government to introduce these bills to amend the constitution. For example, any constitutional amendment bill require a simple majority to be introduced in the respective house, and then it will put to debate. Either it will be sent to the joint parliamentary committee, it will be put to debate. So after extensive discussions, the bill has to be approved by a special majority. A special majority is required for the final passage of the bill. In fact, the passage of the bill requires a 2/3 majority. And apart from that, so the 461 MPs who are present on Tuesday, the government would have required more than 307 votes in favor of it. However, the government did not receive this 307 MPs in favor of the simultaneous elections. However, this is not that important, but you need to understand the procedure of how constitutional amendment bills are being passed. And this is the first time that the electronic voting system was used in the new parliament, and this is also very significant. For the first time, because of for the first time during the simultaneous elections amendment bill is being introduced in the parliament, the electronic voting system was used in the new parliament. Before there was no electronic voting system was existing in the parliament. And secondly, I have also been emphasizing on the Union Territories Amendment Bill 2024 as well. So along with the 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill conducting simultaneous elections for the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies, the Union government, particularly the Law Minister, also introduced Union Territories Amendment Bill of 2024. Now, I have also explained you the objective or the intent of the Union government when it was introducing this Union Territories Amendment Bill. So through this UT Amendment Bill of 2024, the legislative assemblies of Jammu and Kashmir, Delhi and Puducherry, so all these, territories, Union Territories elections will also be synchronized with the elections of Lok Sabha. Okay, so I'm again repeating that this particular bill aligned the duration of legislative assemblies in Union Territories with simultaneous elections for the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies. And this Union Territories Amendment Bill 2024 is going to amend the Union Territories Act of 1963, National Capital Territory of Delhi Act 1991, as well as Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act of 2019. So these bills will be amended by the Union Territories Amendment Bill of 2024. The ultimate aim and objective of this particular amendment bill is to synchronize the elections which are conducted in the Union Territories with the elections of Lok Sabha. So that is largely aligned with the idea of simultaneous elections. Now it is time for us to understand key provisions of 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill 2024. So it is very important for us to understand what are the key provisions in this 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill 2024. So this bill aimed at inserting a new article, that is 82A. So article 82A will be inserted into the constitution. So that is what Constitutional Amendment Bill 129th has been talking about. Now what is this 82A of the constitution? So it says that Election Commission will conduct general elections for the Lok Sabha as well as all state legislative assemblies across India simultaneously, and this is what 82A has been talking about. And secondly, it also talks about the term of legislative assemblies. Now what it says with respect to the term of legislative assemblies: term of all legislative assemblies will end with full term of the Lok Sabha. For suppose, imagine that Lok Sabha term is 5 years, and once the Lok Sabha term ends at 5 years, and all legislative assemblies term will also end at the same time. For example, imagine that we'll take an example of Madhya Pradesh, right? So we'll take an example of Madhya Pradesh. So elections are being held. So simultaneous elections being held for both Lok Sabha as well as State Legislative Assembly of Madhya Pradesh along with all other states. So after 2 years, what happened was, there was a political instability in Madhya Pradesh. So that has led to the fall of the government in power. So now elections will be conducted again for the state of Madhya Pradesh. So Election Commission of India conduct elections again for the state of Madhya Pradesh if necessary. So however, the new government's term will not be 5 years, it is only 3 years. So as of now, the practice is new government's term would be 5 years. So 5 years would be the new government's term as of now. But in case if there is any government collapses in any state, the new government's term would be just the remaining of the period. So that's how elections are being synchronized by Article 82A of the Indian Constitution. See, remember that this 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill is not yet passed by the Parliament, not yet received the assent of the President. So therefore, as of now, there is no 82 Yay. However, in future, if 129th constitutional amendment bill is passed, then they will insert article 82A, and it talks about both of these scenarios. Secondly, it will also amend the existing article 83. Now we'll understand what are the amendments it will bring in. The 129th Constitutional Amendment Act will bring in for Article 83. So in fact, Article 83 defines the unexpired term, mid-term, and even general elections as well. Now it says that Lok Sabha is dissolved before the full term of 5 years as stated. And in fact, the period between date of dissolution and expiry of full term shall be an unexpired term. So this is what Article 83 of the Indian Constitution says. And pursuant to dissolution, a mid-term election shall take place and a new Lok Sabha shall be constituted only for the unexpired term. Okay, so it will be constituted only for the unexpired term. That essentially means, so whatever case that we have just discussed with respect to Madhya Pradesh, the very same case will happen to the central government as well. In case if there is a dissolution of the government in a mid-term, then elections will be held and the new government will function only for the remainder of the period. Okay, so amendment to Article 172 as well. So it will also amend Article 172 as well. So it defines the expired term and full term of the state legislative assemblies. So Article 172 as well as Article 83, and it also plans to introduce Article 82A. That will be a new article apart from amendments to Article 83 as well as Article 172. I hope you have understood this, right? So we have discussed this in a very detailed manner. In future also, these developments with respect to simultaneous elections will discuss that as well. So now let's try to discuss the next topic, that is Constitution on Minority Rights. And this is also a very important article that is given in the Hindu newspaper, right? So this is important in the sense that it is important for your prelims examination as well as your mains examination. Particularly when we talk about the prelims examination general studies paper 2, a mains examination general studies paper 2, this is very important. For prelims, for polity section, this is very important. Now what Indian Constitution actually says on the minority rights. So we have minorities. For example, we have the linguistic minorities, we have the religious minorities as well. So Indian Constitution has given certain rights to these minorities. So we'll try to understand that in a very detailed manner. So we'll understand the context first. The context is that minority rights are the cornerstone of any democratic government or governance. This is very important, right? So please try to understand, any government which takes care of majority, so that government cannot be called as a democratic government, right? So in fact there are states which only looks after the interests of the majority. They generally don't take care of the minority sections. For example, Pakistan, and what has been happening in present Bangladesh, where there is an ethnic cleansing of the minorities, right? So therefore every government which calls itself as a democratic government, so must provide certain rights to the minorities, and minority rights are the cornerstone of a democratic governance. So the minority rights generally include preservation of their cultural, linguistic and religious diversity. Now India is a diverse nation, and India even known as melting pot. Okay, India is also called as melting pot because India is a home to diverse cultures, different religions, different races, different ethnicities. So a different in spite of differences, Indians are living together, right? So Indians are living together in a harmonious manner, and that is the essence of any democratic nation, right? So because of that reason, India is rightly called as a melting pot of all these cultures. So recognizing minority rights and the importance of recognizing or identifying the minorities and their rights, Indian constitution along with the international frameworks. So when we talk about the international frameworks, particularly United Nations, okay, so we all knew that United Nations is an international governance platform. It is an international platform. It is a sole international organization with an overarching structure across, over the entire world. So United Nations 1992 Declaration on Minority Rights. So both Indian Constitution and 1992 Declaration on Minority Rights of the United Nations emphasizes on protecting rights of minorities or protection of minorities. Now minorities are living not just in India, but they are part of different countries. In different countries these minorities have been living, and in fact multiculturalism emphasizes on the rights of the minorities. Minority rights needs to be protected. Now we'll understand the historical context of the minorities rights very briefly, and then we'll go into discussing the provisions of the Indian Constitution which talked about the minority rights. Now when we talk about the historical context, in Austria in the year 1867, so Austria has recognized ethnic minorities. There are certain ethnic groups, right? So they have different ethnicities. Now these ethnic minorities are being recognized in Austria in 1867, and in fact apart from recognizing these different ethnic groups, their rights to their religion, their language, their national identities, even a religion also has been recognized, and that we could say that a foundation of recognizing the cultural, linguistic rights of these different ethnic groups or minorities. And even there were a lot of post World War I treaties also, which specifically focuses on giving more and more rights to the minorities of different countries. And in fact these treaties have also included or incorporated minority protection clauses in agreements with nations like Poland and Czechoslovakia. So particularly they aim to prevent persecution of minorities, so large scale persecution of minorities. So we all knew what happened in the interwar period. So interwar period is the period between the First World War and the Second World War. So during the interwar period, so Jews minorities were persecuted by Nazi Germany under Hitler. So therefore there were a lot of such treaties took place. Those treaties aimed at protection of the minority rights, and in fact India has also been incorporating these respective principles in its constitution. Now India already incorporated the principles in the constitution, particularly protecting the minority rights. For example, when we talk about the Indian constitution, we all knew that Article 29 and Article 30 of the Indian constitution are talking about the minority rights. Okay, so we'll understand what Article 29 and Article 30 talks about minorities. So Article 29 grants the right to conserve their distinctive. For example, if there is any ethnic minority group, either linguistic minority or religious minority, for example Buddhist, Parsi, Jain, Sikh, so all those minorities are known as religious minority. There are some linguistic minorities also, so they have the right to protect their language, they can protect their culture, they can protect their script as well. So this is what Article 29 of the Indian Constitution has been talking about, and in fact it also recognizes and protects diverse cultural identities, ensuring equality as well as dignity. Now for any human being, for any human civilization, human dignity is the foundation. So therefore Indian Constitution has rightly recognized the equality as a principle, and also the dignity of every individual as well as every ethnic group by including Article 29. So therefore there will be a certain steps must be taken in the direction of protecting their respective language, protecting their respective culture and script as well. However, Article 30 of the Indian Constitution also talked about the minorities. So Article 30 empowers the minorities to establish and administer educational institutions of their culture, or relevant or aligned with their culture. Okay, so they can have the right to establish and administer educational institutions. So this is what it has been talking about, Article 30. So these two are very important when we talk about the minority rights in India, and in fact the Supreme Court of India also views Article 30 as integral to equality and non-discrimination. However, minorities across different parts of the world have been facing a lot of challenges. For example, they are being discriminated, they're being alienated also, and they are also facing the identity crisis. They are suffering with the poverty because of the neglect by the respective governments, because in democratic countries where there is a representative democracy is existing, so governments takes care of majority rather than the minority, and this general neglect of minorities very often leads to poverty, communal tensions, economic backwardness, and underrepresentation in politics. So they have been facing all these different challenges. So therefore it is very important to take care, the governments to take care about the minorities and minority rights as well. And Indian Constitution Article 350A also talks about the primary education in one's own mother tongue. Okay, so there is a need for the primary education in one's own mother tongue. Article 350A, again this is part of protecting one's own culture, and Article 350B also talks about appointing a special officer for the linguistic minorities as well. And even Constitution also supports personal laws for various communities exemplified by the customary laws of Nagas, right? So this is how Indian Constitution has included many provisions to protect the minorities, protect their culture, language, their ethnicity, so every aspect that these communities associate themselves with, right? So therefore it would lead to the equality of the minorities with the other mainstream or majority populations, and it would also help them live a dignified life as well. Now, what is the significance of minorities or minority rights for the contemporary India? So we should also understand this. So as we have already discussed that Indian Constitution Article 25 to 30 symbolize India's commitment to pluralism. Now what is pluralism? Now India is called as a plural society in the sense that there are different values, there is a huge diversity. So India is being called as a melting pot. So that essentially means that people who associate themselves with different castes, different religions, different ethnicities, people who speak different languages, they live together in harmony and peace. So that is what is known as pluralism, and India is known as a plural society. India is known as a plural society because of its huge diversity, and people who belong to different groups, different communities, different classes, different castes, ethnicities, they live together in harmony. So that is what is known as pluralism. Now what is the global relevance of minorities, minority rights? So at the global level also we very often see in different countries minorities are being persecuted. So minorities are nowhere safe. They have been facing a lot of issues and a lot of problems. So it aligns with the international principles such as Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in fact, in the year 1948, so UN adopted Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it provides certain basic fundamental rights to every human being for being since irrespective of social status, economic status, the financial status, so every individual being he is born as a human being, so because of that reason he is entitled to certain rights. So that is what this Universal Declaration of Human Rights is talking about. Now apart from this, the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, so there is also another convention that has also been talking about the rights of minorities as well. And I hope all of you know about the fundamental rights. Indian Constitution, part 3 of the Indian Constitution has prescribed certain fundamental rights. So please go through all the fundamental rights, and Article 29, 30 we talked about cultural and educational rights of minorities. So it is important, please go through all these fundamental rights right from Article 14 to Article 32 of the Indian Constitution. Article 14 to 18 talks about right to equality. Article 19 to 22 talks about right to freedom. 23-24 talks about right against exploitation. 25-28 talks about right to freedom of religion and cultural and educational rights of minorities, and right to constitutional remedies, Article 32. So I hope you have understood why minority rights are very important for any society, for any country, and what are the safeguards that Indian Constitution has provided for protecting the minorities and their rights. So apart from that, we need to understand the rationale behind the minority rights. So what exactly is the rationale behind the minority rights? So the rationale is that preservation of diversity that underpins these rights, right? So we should preserve the diversity. So India as a society has a huge diversity, and it is also very important to protect such a huge diversity. And currently, so cultural identity thrives not in isolation but within an enabling environment, right? So as I have already told you that India is a multicultural society. India is a diverse society. So cultural identities of different groups were coexisting in one particular society. So they thrive not in isolation but within an environment that is considered as conducive as well as enabling. Now, it is also very important that we very often face the clash between the individual and group rights, right? So communitarians say that group rights are very important compared to the individual rights, but there are some libertarians who says that individual rights are more important. So however, the individual equality that has been emphasized by the Indian Constitution through Article 14 to 18, Article 19 and 25 is insufficient without the group recognition. So however, here the group rights are also very, very important along with the individual rights as well. However, Supreme Court and even high courts of number of states time and again emphasizes on the necessity of special protections for these minorities. So the rights of minorities should not be violated, and minorities should not be persecuted, minorities should not be discriminated, their welfare needs to be taken care of. So this is what time and again the Supreme Court and High Court have been emphasized on, because India is a plural society, India is a diverse democratic society. So therefore it is very important for Indian democracy to protect the minority rights, safeguard the minority rights as wished by the Indian Constitution. So next is another very important topic. So this topic is about the minimum support prices, right? So we all knew that there has been a demand from the farmer communities that minimum support prices should be given legal recognition. So as of now, MSP has not been provided any legal status, right? However, farmers have been demanding that there should be a statutory recognition to the minimum support prices. So that means the state is obligated to provide minimum support price to the farmers for their produce. However, the government is not ready to provide legal recognition to the MSP, even though the government has been announcing MSP for around 23 crops. So we'll understand the context of this article. What exactly is the context of it, right? So the context is that recently we all knew that farmers from Punjab, Haryana and other different parts of the country come to Delhi. They protested for almost 1 year against three farm laws that the union government has passed. Okay, so those bills are considered as arbitrary bills, and farmers have protested against those three bills. And even during that particular protest, farmers have come up with one unique demand, that is providing legal recognition to the minimum support price. However, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on the Minimum Support Price has recommended to the union government that there should be a legal recognition to the minimum support price, so that it will improve the living standards of the farmers, it improves the income of the farmers, and it will also prevent the farm suicides as well. So we all knew that farmers have been committing suicides because of number of reasons. So farmers generally don't have access to the institutional credit, right? So farmers take loans with a higher interest rate from the local money lenders. Because of the crop failures, they may not be able to repay those loans, and ultimately it will lead to the situation like they commit suicide. So this joint parliamentary committee, the standing committee of the parliament, has recommended that MSP should be given a legal recognition. This is what it has suggested, right? So now what is MSP? We'll try to understand this MSP. Now MSP is the procurement price that the government announces before the sowing of every season, both Kharif and Rabi seasons, right? So this will be the minimum price that the government announces. So if farmer is being, for example, imagine that rice, okay, so 1 quintal of rice that MSP government announced is 1500 rupees. Okay, so 1500 rupees would be the MSP. Now imagine that after harvesting Kharif crop, after harvesting Kharif rice, so most of the produce would reach the market at a one single time, and there is a high probability that the price would fall down sharply. The price would fall down sharply, and it could even reach 1300 or 1200 per quintal as well. So if market price is lesser than the MSP that the government has announced, so you can go to the procurement center and you can sell your produce at a FCI arranged procurement center at a 1500 rupees in case the market price of rice is 1300 or lesser than that, or even lesser than the 1500. So however, if the market price is more than 1500, so farmers can sell the produce in the market itself. So ultimately it safeguards the farmers, it protects the farmers. But MSP is only given for the 23 crops. Not all crops are being given the MSP, only 23 crops are being given MSP. Now what is the context? It is very important for us to understand the context as well. So the context is that there is a long-standing demand from the farmer organizations that there should be a legal recognition for the minimum support price. However, recently the standing committee of the Parliament on Agriculture, so that is being headed by the Congress leader and former Punjab Chief Minister Charanjit Singh Channi, has recommended legally guaranteed MSP for crops. So as of now, there is no legal guarantee of MSP. So MSP is not given the legal guarantee. It is at the discretion of the government that the government announces MSP during every cropping season, both Kharif and Rabi. And in fact, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has also asked the central government to increase the amount given to farmers under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. So we all knew that under Kisan Samman Nidhi, the union government has been giving every landed farmer 6,000 rupees per annum. However, these 6,000 rupees per annum is being given in 3 installments and directly credited into the farmers' bank accounts through direct benefit transfer. So however, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has recommended that the PM Kisan beneficiaries should be given 12,000 rupees instead of the current central government's 6,000 rupees, because it will benefit the farmers. It will benefit the farmers by meeting the input cost or input needs, because 6,000 rupees is insufficient, and because of considering inflation, 6,000 rupees is not sufficient, and that's why there is a need to provide 12,000 rupees for input needs. So this is the second recommendation. Now we'll understand what is the significance of recommending statutory MSP. Now why it is very important, we need to understand that, because this is also a very important dimension, and there is a high probability that you may get question on about this in your mains exam as well as your prelims examination, particularly general studies paper 3. This topic is very important. We all knew that in India, farmer suicide is one of the major problem. So farmers very often committing suicides, and most of these farmers are small and marginal farmers or the tenant farmers, right? So they are incurring huge losses, and because of these huge losses and because of these huge losses and debt burden on the farmers, so farmers have no other option, they just committing the suicide. And the Standing Committee of the Parliament has recommended that providing the statutory guarantee of MSP will address the farmer suicides problem. So apart from that, in fact, there's always a demand from the farmers unions, farmers organizations, that there is a need for the agricultural reform as well. Okay, so MSP remains a central point in the dialogue that has been surrounding agriculture reform and farmers welfare as well. Now in this context, implementing a legally binding minimum support price in India is essential. It is very important because it could address the farmers' suicides. So it ensures the remunerative price for the farmers for their produce, and it also incentivizes the farmers to invest in agriculture, right? So because when they are not getting the remunerative prices, when they are incurring deep debt, so it of course discourages farmers to venture into farming. They are migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas. Okay, so where they are working as a construction workers and they lack safety and security, right? So in this context, implementing the legally guaranteed minimum support price is essential not only for safeguarding the farmers and their livelihoods, but this is also very important for promoting the rural economic growth and also enhancing food security as well. So it is very important that we need to ensure food security for our populations. How can we ensure food security for our populations? When farmers are incentivized to cultivate, to practice agriculture, to be part of the agriculture. So that's how we can encourage farmers to cultivate more and more, and that's how we could ensure the food security of our populations. And the benefits and advantages of implementing MSP and legal guarantee far outweigh its challenges, and this is what this Standing Committee of the Parliament has been suggesting with respect to the legal guarantee of MSP. Okay, and apart from that, you can also go through some reasons for the failure of minimum support price in India. There are some reasons. Due to those reasons, the minimum support price regime is largely failed. For example, there is no robust procurement policy, and in fact procurement is only limited to some big states such as Haryana, Western UP, Punjab. So there is no robust procurement policy, and improper supervision of food imports, inaccurate evaluation of cost by the Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices. So this Commission on Agricultural Costs and Prices is the agency, so that the commission that recommends MSP to the government, and government will take a final call on that as well. So along with that, there are some other reasons also which are responsible for the MSP failure. And apart from that, the other significant aspect is that legalized MSP would further stimulate the economic activity in India, and particularly in farming areas. Thereby it would benefit the local businesses as well as the local economies as well. And apart from that, it would also result in assured income through the minimum support price. So minimum support price ensures assured income for the farmers, and more likely farmers would invest in agricultural practices, and that would further increases the productivity, sustainability in the farming as well, right? So over a period of time, this would contribute to the food security of our country. Now, when farmers are getting consistent income through agriculture, and farmers are being incentivized for practicing agriculture, so they can plan better, and they can also maintain production without a fear of market fluctuations, right? So because the biggest fear of the farmers is market fluctuations. Sometimes the prices would be higher, and in that case it would benefit the farmers, and sometimes the market prices would surge lesser than the minimum. So farmers are always in fear, but a guaranteed MSP ensures that farmers can plan the cultivation, and they can also maintain a consistent production without any fear of market fluctuations. And in fact, a legally binding minimum support price system could even play a crucial role or a very important role in farmer suicides, right? So how? Because as of now, there is no such legal guarantee of MSP, and there is no procurement centers also to procure food grains from the farmers, right? So when government announces legal MSP, so there will be a guarantee that the government will definitely or certainly purchase produce from you, right? So that will play a very important role in reducing farmer suicides in India by providing financial stability, protecting against market volatility, and alleviating debt burden, and also improving overall mental health among the farmers. So that is very important, right? So because once farmer commits a suicide, his entire family will be on the road, I would say. Because if that particular family has a school going children, they need to stop the school, they need to stop going to the school, and enrollment ratios would drop, and they would work somewhere as a child laborer. So the entire family would be under the debt trap, the chronic debt trap. So legal guarantee would protect the farmers from the problems that they have been facing. However, here given some arguments for a legal guarantee of MSP and some arguments against the legal guarantee of MSP. So we'll just look into it in a very brief manner. So a legal guarantee of MSP would provide financial security for the farmers, right? So in the market, there are fluctuations of prices, so it would protect farmers from the instability, price fluctuations. So thereby they can plan better, right? So they will not fear about the fluctuations in the market. And apart from that, legal MSP would be a cover for the farmers, right? So in case of a crop failure due to climate change or pest attack, so then also it would be to some extent it would be covered, and it will also promote crop diversification as well. So farmers would now focus on legalized MSP ensures that farmers can focus on diverse crops, and crop diversification is very beneficial for the soil health. It is also beneficial for the ecosystem as well. So therefore, legalized MSP can encourage farmers to cultivate different crops, and it will also leads to the crop diversification. And MSP would send a price signal to private players that this will be the benchmark. So if you wanted to procure the produce from the farmers, you need to buy that produce higher than the MSP. So it will be a benchmark price as well, and it will be a solution for the rural distress also. In rural areas, there's a rural distress, I would say, because of recurrent droughts, failure of agriculture, failure of the crops. Farmers have been committing suicides, and there is increasing poverty levels, increasing number of child marriages and child labor, and also rural urban migration. So in order to solve all these issues and rural distress, so we could announce the legal guarantee of the MSP. However, there are some other arguments also which are against the legal guarantee of the MSP, such as a huge fiscal burden on the government exchequer. This is what we need to consider at first, because an estimate of 5 trillion rupees, right? So 5 lakh crore would be required for the implementation of MSP guarantee law. And apart from that, there's a huge risk of undervaluation of crops with low yields as well, and it will also further increases the food inflation, and that impact the lower middle class and the poor. If government started procuring all the food grain, of course it impacts the food inflation as well, because private players would have a lesser amount of food to sell in the market, and market discretion and economically unsustainable practices may also start, and it would also leads to the black marketing as well, and it even leads to the violation of WTO subsidies principle. So as per WTO subsidies principle, these developing countries should not give more than 15% of certain limit subsidies. So however, India, if provides legal guarantees to MSP, so that would lead to the violation of WTO subsidy principle. So all these points are very, very important. They will help in your mains answer writing. So therefore, kindly pause the video and note down all these points. And the next topic is about the manual scavenging and what are the government's views on manual scavenging. Right. So recently, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has held that sewer cleaning and occupation-based work, it is not a caste-based work, because manual scavenging and sewer cleaning is very often associated with the people of the marginalized sections, people from the marginalized. So this is how the society views people who have engaged in manual scavenging or sewer cleaning, and because of that reason the center has to respond, and center has said that sewer cleaning and occupation based work, it is not a caste based work. This is what the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has held. So we'll understand some basic details about this as well. The context is that recently, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, citing data from the first ever survey of sewer and septic tank workers all across India, so held that sewer and septic tank cleaning is occupation based activity, right? This is an occupation based activity, but not a caste based activity. So this is not a caste based activity, so that is being viewed so far. This is what the response of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment to the Parliament or in the Parliament. And in fact, in order to improve the living standards or the conditions of people who have engaged in manual scavenging and even the sewer cleaning, the government has launched an ambitious and flagship Namaste program, right? So it has launched the Namaste program particularly to improve the livelihoods of the people who have engaged in manual scavenging as well as the sewer cleaning. So the government survey has shown that nearly 92% of all workers were from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and other backward classes. So around 92% belong to SCs, STs and other backward classes, but remaining 8% of the manual scavengers and these workers are actually septic cleaning workers are from general category. So this is what the survey has revealed. And apart from that, 67.91% were from SC communities and 15.73% were from OBC communities and 8.31 from STs and 8.05 were from the general category. So about the manual scavenging or septic cleaning or sewer cleaners. And apart from that, the Union government has brought in one very important, very ambitious legislation for the protection, rehabilitation of the manual scavengers. So manual scavengers are the people, they used to clean the septic tanks, sewer lines with their hands. So they are manual scavengers. So however, it is the violation of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It is against the principle of equality and the principle of dignity. So in order to protect the dignity of every individual, what the union government has did, so union government has brought in a program called Namaste, and also it has already brought in a legislation called Prohibition of Employment as Manual Scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act of 2013. And in fact, this particular act supersedes 1993 Act, and it also prohibits all forms of manual excrement cleaning of insanitary latrines, open drains or pits as well. And apart from that, the prohibition of employment as manual scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act 2013 also focuses on rehabilitation of manual scavengers, and it also provides measures for their overall welfare as well. That is what, for example, an alternative employment opportunity, skilling them, providing them an alternative opportunity, employment opportunity, providing them the credit access, all these things would be done under the Prohibition of Employment as Manual Scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013. And in fact, it is part of Namaste program, and Namaste program is a program which aimed to mechanize all sewer work and prevent deaths due to the hazardous cleaning work, right? So because of a cleaning that involves in hazardous work and working conditions, so very often it leads to the death of the workers. So therefore it is very important that the cleaning has to be more and more mechanized. So in 23-24 it was brought to replace the self-employment scheme for rehabilitation of manual scavengers. And even center's rationale is that manual scavenging as a practice has ended across the country, and what needs to be done now is to fix the hazardous cleaning of sewers and septic tanks. So this is being still practiced, and there's a need to fix this aspect as well, because it is also violation of the right to dignity and right to life as well. So in fact, the center has draws its distinction based on some technical difference about the manual scavenging as well as the hazardous cleaning of sewers and septic tanks. That has been defined by the Prohibition of Employment as Manual Scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act. So between 2019 and 2023, at least 377 people died working as septic tank cleaners, and also the sewer cleaners. So therefore it is a cause of concern, because of they are working in such a horrible conditions, and it is very often hazardous, and it even threatens their life. So therefore there is a need to bring in such programs which particularly aim at rehabilitation and resettlement of the manual scavengers. So however, today we have one very important question that is based on the Uniform Civil Code. So we all knew that there have been regular debates about the Uniform Civil Code. And in fact, the Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, says that the government should be endeavored to implement a uniform civil code across the country, and there is a general debate all across the country that this uniform civil code must be implemented. However, in India, Goa is the only state so that has uniform civil code is in place. And apart from that, recently Uttarakhand government has also brought in a bill to implement uniform civil code in the state. However, there is a debate all across the country to bring in the uniform civil code. So that means the common law, right? For example, when uniform civil code is brought in, there will be no personal laws. For example, personal laws for the Muslims, personal laws for the Christians. So there will be no personal laws, right? So there will be one single law, there will be one single common law for the entire country, and this is in line with the one nation, one law, or one nation, one legislation principle. So that will be the principle based on which a UCC would be implemented across the country. So we'll understand about this because this is also very important, and there's also a very high probability that this may be asked in your mains examination if you are giving your mains examination, right? So in the introduction, what you should do, you should briefly define what constitutes uniform civil code, or what you should briefly describe what is uniform civil code in the introduction. So the idea of uniform civil code is that it seeks to replace the personal laws. For example, different religious communities have different personal laws as of now. However, if UCC is brought in, it will replace the personal laws which are existing based on the religious scriptures, customs, with a common set of laws governing every citizen irrespective of their religion. Now this uniform civil code means a common set of laws governing every citizen irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their ethnicity, irrespective of race, the caste. However, as of now, this is not the case because different communities have different personal laws, but Article 44 specifically talks about bringing in a uniform civil code. Okay, so we'll understand what is the constitutional basis of uniform civil code. Now, why there is a huge debate on implementing a uniform civil code all across the country. So we'll try to understand that aspect as well. So Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, particularly the Directive Principles of State Policy, as I have already told you, it says, or it advocates that it aims, it advocates for a uniform civil code for all citizens in India, and it also aims to unify and integrate the country by ensuring that all citizens are treated equally under the law irrespective of their religion. That means they should not have their own common personal laws. All citizens must be treated equally under the law irrespective of their respective religion. And apart from that, Article 14 of the Indian Constitution also guarantees the right to equality before the law. Okay, so as I have asked you to go through all the fundamental rights. So Article 14 talks about right to equality before the law and equal protection of laws. So that supports the idea of, again, uniform civil code, because it promotes equality of all citizens and it also promotes uniformity in the legal matters. That means equality before law and equal protection of the laws in India. And apart from that, Article 25 also guarantees the freedom of religion, but with a condition that freedom is subjected to public order, morality, health, and even other fundamental rights. So that specifically suggests that personal laws can be regulated to ensure equality, right? So understand one thing, that fundamental rights are not absolute, they're not sacrosanct. They are subjected to reasonable restrictions. In a similar way, Article 25 is also not an absolute right. It is not a sacrosanct. It is also subjected to other fundamental rights as well as the order, morality, and health as well. So therefore, it suggests that personal laws can be regulated to ensure equality among all individuals. So what are the arguments that have been existing in favor of UCC as a secular civil code? So we should also understand this aspect, right? So for example, arguments in favor of UCC: secularism and modernity, because uniform civil code very often associate itself with the modernity. It is also associated with the modern secular principles where law will be separated from the religion, state will be separated from religion. That is secularism, right? So however, in uniform civil code, law will be separated from religion. So law and religion will be viewed separately. So therefore, it is aligned with the secular and modern principles as well. And it ensures equality. So how it ensures equality? Because it would provide equal legal protection, as we have already discussed with respect to Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. So thereby it could eliminate gender as well as religious biases present in personal laws. And it would also strengthen the national unity as well, because as a nation it is very important that we need to protect the unity and integrity of our nation. And when we have multiple laws, those multiple laws are governing multiple religions, of course that is not in the best interest of our country. So therefore, applying a common set of laws to all citizens, a UCC could reduce the fragmentation of society based on the religious lines. So we could also say that it would prevent the ghettoization of the society as held by Amartya Sen with respect to the multicultural rights. So it would also simplify the legal system as well, right? A single set of laws would simplify the existing legal system, because it is so complex and it is so confusing if we have a multiple set of laws governing different religions. So therefore, it is very important that we need to simplify the legal system, making it easier for the citizens to understand and even follow, for courts to adjudicate. And apart from that, gender justice is also another very important dimension of the Uniform Civil Code, because when people have different laws which govern their personal matters. So very often women have the subordinate position, women are being exploited, women are being discriminated. But when we have a uniform civil code that is based out of reason and logic, that is also based out of the modern secular principle, so there is a high probability that the gender aspect or gender equality can be ensured, gender justice can be achieved in the matters of inheritance, marriage and divorce. So men and women could come at an equal footing. So these are some arguments in favor of the Uniform Civil Code. However, there are some other arguments against the Uniform Civil Code as well. For example, so religious freedom concerns. So as we have already discussed, that Article 25 talks about freedom of religion for every individual. However, some people who are criticizing the enforcement of the Uniform Civil Code could infringe upon the religious freedoms which are being guaranteed under Article 25 of the Indian Constitution, because what it will lead to the homogenization of different cultures, different ethnicities, different groups who belong to different religions, right? So homogenization will not be desirable for a diverse democracy like India. This is what the critics have been saying. And apart from that, imposing Uniform Civil Code on people might be seen as a judicial overreach into the domain of personal laws, okay, so which traditionally have been handled by the the religious bodies. So however, so in conclusion, it would be better if you write recommendations of a law commission, recommendations of any other commission or any other famous scholar in the conclusion, so that makes conclusion more and more attractive. So what 21st Law Commission has held with respect to the Uniform Civil Code? So 21st Law Commission has recommended that Uniform Civil Code is neither necessary nor desirable at this stage. So this is what Uniform Civil Code has, the 21st Law Commission has talked about with respect to UCC. And in this context, it has also said that government must take a piecemeal approach in removing the gender disparities in matters of marriage, divorce, inheritance, and even personal laws as well. There should be no discrimination and no exploitation of women, and government must restrain from implementing all aspects of Uniform Civil Code in a single legislation. So this is what the conclusion should be. It should be like a way forward. You can also mention any committee, you can also write a way forward that makes the conclusion more and more appropriate. And we have given some constitutional basis of UCC, some arguments in favor and some arguments against the Uniform Civil Code. So that's how you can make the entire answer holistic, right? So that helps you score a very good marks. And finally, that's it. And thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.